Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Captains of Industry. I'm Bronwyn Nielsen. Our captain this evening is Abey Mokgwatsane, the man at the helm of one of South Africa's leading advertising and communication companies, Ogilvy, South Africa. Thanks so much for your time, Abey.
Thank you.
What does it take to be at the head of the game when it comes to the brand environment?
I think it takes being exceptionally creative, because creative breaks through. But also making sure that you are effective at being able to drive sales and drive messaging. That's what it takes to be at the top of our industry.
When you speak about the highlights of your career, you mentioned the opening and closing ceremony of the 2010 World Cup. Take us back to that time.
Oh my word, I mean, that was both the most exciting and the most traumatic time of my life. I mean, it was just, everything happened in that same year. My son was born in that year. He's 2 years old now. You know, for me, what the World Cup did is that it reinforced my belief that as South Africans we can get together, as Africans we can get together and achieve on a world-class stage and deliver best practice across the world, which is what we did.
The biggest challenges over that period for you?
Biggest challenge was dealing with FIFA, dealing with the South African government, and dealing with stakeholders that within a normal agency environment, I was at VWV at the time, that you typically wouldn't deal with. So I really felt honored to be at the forefront of a really amazing South African and African story, but you had to deal with all the things that come along with working on our continent.
And what is the key to that stakeholder engagement that can, as you allude to, sometimes be complicated?
I think it's two things. I think one, it's empathy, being empathetic about where people are coming from and their particular perspectives. That's very important. And I think as South Africans, we're born to be empathetic. But the second thing is about getting to the point where you have an absolute deadline and deliverables around what it is you need to achieve. And sometimes that kind of loses focus because of our own empathetic nature. We need to know where to draw the line.
Take us through your journey and perhaps start with SAB, then the VWV journey, and then to the managing director position at Ogilvy SA.
Yeah. I always knew that I wanted to get into marketing. In fact, my first job was at VWV. I've only ever worked for 3 companies in my life. My first job was at VWV as a marketing trainee. When I graduated, I became marketing manager. And then I left after about 2.5, 3 years at VWV.
So it was an internship?
It was an internship.
You started with an internship?
Yeah, I was an intern. But it was really amazing for me because I got to work in a non-traditional agency. So I dabbled in mobile and digital and experiential, a lot of things that my peers who were in the traditional world of marketing just didn't have an appreciation of. So when I went to SAB, I worked on a program called Castle Loud, which was a multimedia program that was on TV, radio, did events, had probably one of the first brand websites in the country. And that's where I cut my teeth around integrated brand marketing. I launched Miller Genuine Draft in 2005 and 2003. And then I went back to VWV as a shareholder. I got together with 2 partners, Wanda Shanyani and Jameson Tlangwane. And we bought a majority stake in the company that I was a trainee at.
So the integrated marketing campaign was what set you apart? Yes,
it was that experience, that marketing is more than just above the line or the classical marketing context that you taught at university. So that's what set me apart.
And then taking VWV to the next stage, so from intern to shareholder.
Yeah, it was an amazing period. Again, I could leverage off the experience that I had from corporate. My partners also had experience in their different environments, and we could add value to VWV, which made it quite a different BEE deal in the communications environment at that stage. A lot of the BEE deals that were done were people who had money and had political connections, but there were very little people who had actual experience who could add value to the business on a daily basis that were doing those type of deals back then. And that really set us apart. Obviously the World Cup was the apex of our history at that stage at VWV, because we could bring to fore all the things that we'd learned.
The transition from VWV to Ogilvy SA, why did you make the move? And are you still a shareholder at VWV?
No, I'm not. Contractually, I can't be in any case. Nuno Njingila, who's the chairman of Ogilvy South Africa, has been someone that I've been extremely fond of my whole life. She's been someone
a mentor?
Yes. And I've looked up to her. I used to meet her probably twice a year to say, how are things going. When I was at VWV, she was actually one of the only agencies that helped us out with a couple of projects, some big projects actually. And I went and I met her for lunch one day, like I do twice a year, and she said, listen, I knew she was going to offer me a job. I just had that feeling, but I didn't know she was going to offer me hers.
You didn't know quite what it was.
No, I didn't know she was going to be hers. And I mean, how can you refuse that? Ogilvy South Africa is the largest communication agency in the business. You have leaders like Nono that have been able to build an absolutely amazing business. There's incredible people. And it was time for me to move on and do something different within my field of expertise. So I'm loving it. Yeah.
Give me a little color around the first 100 days at Ogilvy South Africa.
I tell you what, agencies are not the
traditional corporate arena.
Yeah, it's not the traditional corporate arena.
I want to hear something wacky that happened over the first 100 days.
Something
Shock
wacky.
Us. What do you do at agencies when you take over the helm?
The first thing you do, I intended to go out there and not to do anything except listen for the first 100 days. I mean, I'm one of those guys that gets immediately into the action very quickly. But I said, you actually just have to sit back, and my business coach's advice to me was just don't do anything, just listen and absorb. And that's all I did. And I walked around and I met people. I made it a point to remember people's names, and there's a much bigger business than VWV. And that's all I did. And the wackiest thing about our business is the fluid nature of it. It seems from the outside as being very structured, especially being an Ogilvy brand. I mean, we're probably the most business end of the agency world. But the fluidity of it was something that I couldn't get used to. A lot of things were just done in a very iterative nature. And I needed to learn how to adapt that into my own style.
You mentioned your business coach said that you should listen.
Yes.
Tell me about this business coach and what part does the business coach play in your life? Should everybody have a business coach?
I think so. And even if it's not a formal business coach, you need to have somebody that you can reference off. Someone
Is yours a formal business coach?
Yes, mine's a formal business coach. He's actually he's a business psychologist. What I do on a daily basis, as I'm a leader, that's my field of expertise. The fact that I'm running a marketing business is irrelevant. I'm a leader. That's my profession. And I believe that you should always be trying to advance what it is you do on a daily basis. And this is what I chose to do, and it's given me great value. It gives me perspective, and it's someone to engage with that you can trust, that you can be completely frank and transparent with. It's really helped me.
What defines you as a leader?
My knowledge and ability to understand that you can only be as good as your engagement with people. You work through people. That's what leaders do. So my job is to help define a path and inspire people to getting there. And the only way I can do that is by engaging people and getting them to do it for themselves. I can't possibly do all the things that Ogilvy South Africa requires me to do if I can't get my people supporting me and
what do you look for
living
in your
up
people?
to that. Mostly, I look for inspiration. I look for people that have a positive outlook on what the world can be, where this country can go, and where brands can go. That's the most important thing to me. I don't do well with pessimists. So it's an attitude. I think everything else you can develop in people through training.
How do you keep up with innovation in the branding and advertising game? And you know that I'm going to go directly to the social media phenomenon that has hit the industry.
Innovation in our field is really around two things. It's how do you digitize your business, and how do you continually innovate on how you develop creative concepts and ideas. The way that we advance our own innovation is to be tapped into our global network. We're fortunate enough to have an incredible global network. We've already had about 13 visits from people from our global network coming to South Africa, giving us training, engaging with us about what's going on in other markets. Of course, we get to share what's going on in our market with them too. And continually finding ways of creating, finding ways of being able to create the creative output that we do. One of the mistakes that I believe BlackBerry made is that they closed themselves off from the app market. And we are in the world of ideas. So we are finding ways of integrating and crowdsourcing ideas and concepts from a wider base of people than just our own creative department. So those are the two fields that we
Are
developing
companies
in.
moving to outsource their entire communication strategy, or is there a trend for them to bring it in-house now?
It's different for different companies. I think most professional multinationals that have been doing this for decades have got a combination of both. They've got a very strong strategic marketing core, and they outsource to specialists for the areas that they don't do. I mean, most people in a marketing environment don't have time to do the work that we do. They're focused on distribution, pricing, formulation, product formulation, those kind of stuff. Those are things that need to be done, and they have enough trust to guide us and help us be the best communication service providers.
Earlier you
as
said
possible.
you look for inspiration in the people that you surround
Yeah.
yourself with. How do you hang on to them? Because those inspiring people generally have big dreams and they want to execute themselves as they see you doing.
Yeah, it's a relationship. I think Ogilvy has always had a really good relationship as being an agency that develops people. We've got a very good, strong people brand. But it's something that I feel we need to do a lot more in. We are building right now our employee value proposition, which says this is what we're going to give you, and in return, this is what you're going to give us. And our appraisal system keeps tab on that. And if people have to go and they have to go and learn something else, you have to be confident enough to let them do that. But I believe that if you're able to give people a stimulating environment in which to work, and they get to better themselves as individuals through working with you, they'll stay.
Are you experiencing a lot of churn, just given the nature of the industry, or do you tend to see your people hanging around?
I think on the whole, we have a lot of people hanging around, but our younger people is something that's a bit more of a challenge, and that speaks to exactly what I was saying earlier. I think we can do better, and I don't think we've been as good as we can be at articulating what that employee value proposition is, and that's why we've got more churn than we need.
We're going to a short commercial break. More with Ogilvy SA's Abey Mokgwatsane when we return. Stay tuned to CNBC Africa.